introduce him now. So Alan Bates joined the police department about 13 years ago. Since that time, he has attained his master's degree in criminal justice. He was a patrol officer, a traffic officer, a patrol sergeant, most recently the Novato response team sergeant. And I say most recently because I'll announce to all of you, he was selected, a day ago as the investigations sergeant, another step up. And it won't be too long before he's gonna sit in this chair as lieutenant. And he's looking at me now. We don't do Friars Club roasts of our members to the outside, but we want to. Trust me, we want to, but I'm not going to do that for him. Very happy that he was invited to speak to the club. I think he's going to have a lot of great information. And like I said, in years, he'll get the seat permanently, but for today, he's going to take the seat now. So if you'd all welcome Alan Bates.
Well, he might not be willing to do a Friars roast, but I'll do one of him. Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start with some basic information, but I also have an announcement. I know I'm not part of the club, but if you be so inclined, I spoke with Gary earlier today, and tomorrow's a big day for his family. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, Gary, but his mother turns 100 tomorrow. And I think that's pretty significant and worthy of at least noteworthy enough to mention during the meeting. So I hope that's acceptable that I just said that. It's a big milestone.
Sure is. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
And I'm glad you're up there with her too, Gary.
Yeah.
I was out of the room when Lieutenant Howard mentioned kind of my background and what I've been doing recently. If you'll be so inclined, I'll take a couple minutes explaining exactly what we do with the Novato response team, what our goals are, and then I'm going to throw in kind of a shameless plug to try and get support for our school resource officers. And then I'm going to open the floor to the rest of you just to have open questions for any topics you'd like to discuss. The elephant in the room here is our homeless issue, and I'd really like to dig into that. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like the opportunity to speak at length. And by the end of this, I'm going to provide you with my contact information. I want it to be a resource for you. Anything you need, you can reach out directly to me. So the Novato response team started back in 2012. It was initially more or less a crime prevention unit, kind of a street crimes group. Our goal was to go out, find bad guys, take them to jail. Pretty simple. It's morphed now into what we describe as a problem-oriented policing unit or community-oriented policing unit. It's dedicated to quality of life issues and identifying what I describe as issues that we run into that are a bit outside the scope of normal patrol officers. So our expectation is to find more or less a project that's going on. Many of these come directly from city council. Some of these projects come directly from the chief's office, and some of them are proactively located by my unit. These officers on patrol are working 40-hour weeks, dedicated hours. They don't have the flexibility that my unit has to deal with some of these larger problems. It used to be go find the bad guy and take him to jail. Now it's go find the homeless person and see what we can do to get him housed. And that's 85% of the work that they're doing, which is too bad. It's unfortunate we're in that position, but that's the reality of the situation. And that's the biggest issue that I think we have in this city, especially from a law enforcement standpoint and a health and human services standpoint. So I'd like to talk specifically about issues that we've run into in the last few years. 2 years ago, there would be no encampment behind the library. It wouldn't exist. It was against the law. You're not allowed to set up a camp and tent wherever you want, and set up camp wherever you want, especially on public property and most certainly on private property. A number of years ago, the public voted on what's called Proposition 47. That's a voter-initiated law. But the idea to reduce or decriminalize certain violations. The goal here was to eliminate booking people into jail and spending the money that cost. The plan was to put that money that we're going to save from keeping people out of the criminal justice system, we're going to put that into a social service fund and prevent these people from committing crimes and prevent these people from getting booked into jail. Beginning of last year, that was a 2014 proposition. The beginning of last year, 6 years later, after that proposition, we realized our first benefit to that law. So we spent 6 years without any assistance from a law that was supposed to give us resources. And it was realized in the form of basically a social worker. We call him a recovery coach. His name's Labrado Garcia. He's dedicated to identifying people that are at risk of becoming part of the criminal justice system and getting them out of whatever situation they're dealing with. Mental health issues, substance abuse, violence, maybe domestic violence type situation, and removing that person from the criminal justice system. Prop 47 was a significant impact on law enforcement because of our ability to enforce laws. The easiest example I can give you, before Prop 47, if you were walking down the street with a bag of meth in your pocket, I would take your bag of meth and I would take you to jail. After Prop 47, I take your bag of meth and I give you a ticket. So now we have somebody that is out of meth walking down the street in your community. Jail is not the end all. It's not the answer to all the issues that we deal with, but it fixed that problem at least temporarily. And Prop 47 took that out of our hands. Fast forward 4 years, approximately 2018, 2019, Martin v. Boise. It's a decision by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that says, without alternatives, we can't criminalize a homeless person for camping on public property. And the already significant issue that we were dealing with, homelessness and lack of housing, skyrocketed. And don't you think that every single one of the homeless people in this city didn't hear about that law right away? And they were empowered by it. That's the truth. This city right now has approximately 100 homeless people, give or take 10% on any given day. And when I say homeless people, I'm talking about those that are not in a shelter, living in a car, living in a tent, living under a bridge. My unit, the folks that deal with the homelessness in my unit, there's 2 officers. And then we have Labrado from the Prop 47 grant that I mentioned earlier. So you're looking at 100 people approximately, and 3 people to deal with the issue. Trying to get help from the Health and Human Services from the county. They've been very gracious. They're hardworking people, and they're helpful. I'd like to make sure you understand one thing. The city of Novato, the entire government, the weeds and seeds, the cops, janitorial staff, the entire city government is not even as big as Health and Human Services from the county of Marin. Homelessness, housing, substance abuse is a county concern. So why is Novato Police Department responding to these calls and dealing with this kind of stuff? Because it's a quality of life issue. Because as soon as somebody says there's a homeless person in a tent outside my business, my house, and they make me feel unsafe, now it's a law enforcement issue. If it's a homeless person living in a tent and they're not bothering anybody, it's not a law enforcement issue. And for right now, I foresee this changing, but as of right now, there is no 911 for Health and Human Services. So when you have a concern or you feel uncomfortable, who do you call? And it's the dispatch center, the folks sitting in the room three doors down here, because they will answer the phone 24/7, 365 days a year. I foresee within the next decade, there will be a 911 for Health and Human Services. A lot of the people in public, a lot of the community members nationwide don't want to see a uniformed and armed police officer handling mental health issues, homelessness, school issues. It's a hot topic right now. But in order for that to happen, we have to change the mindset of the public from calling the police department for help with something to having an alternative. And there really isn't that right now in a 911 type fashion. Lee Gerner Park. I've gotten to a first name basis with Dr. McCurdy and Dr. Simon. Their first name is Doctor, and I keep it that way. I never realized when dealing with the homelessness in this city that I'd established as many relationships as I have in the last year and a half or so. I've told Dr. McCurdy this and Dr. Simon this, but there are times when I go to sleep thinking about Lee Gerner Park, and there's times that I wake up thinking about Lee Gerner Park. And I know that's not healthy, but that's the honest truth. It is our number one concern as it pertains to homelessness in this city. Current census of the encampment is 16 occupants. It was at a height of 25 approximately 2 months ago. There is one shelter in the county of Marin available right now. They have been doing a great job accepting people into that emergency shelter down on Kerner Boulevard in San Rafael. And to date, since it opened 2 months ago or so, we've referred 21 people. We've referred 21 people to that shelter. That's a significant number of people in a short amount of time. That kind of turnover has never happened in the history of Health and Human Services in this unit. But let's be clear when I say that this has become much more than a group of people in need. And I don't want to sound callous. I don't want to sound like I don't have any empathy for those that are homeless, but I want to make it very clear that there's a difference between somebody who's homeless and somebody who's trying to prove a point. And it's become a great measure of frustration, especially for my unit, knowing that we're working very hard to find people alternatives to living in a tent and getting pushback. We can't have in life, I don't need to tell you this, but in life, not everything is fair and not everything is free. It's become an extremely frustrating point in dealing with some individuals. I've explained this several times, and certainly have explained this with an apologetic tone to Dr. McCurdy and the other business owners in the area. But we're handcuffed in a lot of ways, but I refuse to say we can't. I want to identify a couple of things that I hope to change in the near future to make people moving into services a little bit more efficient. As of right now, there has been no standard set by any law enforcement agency in the county of Marin, including the Marin County District Attorney's Office, on whether or not somebody is committing a crime by camping in a public place when they have an alternative. Does everybody kind of follow what I just said right there, or should I clarify that? If there's no shelter bed available, I can't criminalize them sleeping in a park. So can I criminalize them for sleeping in a park if there's a shelter bed available? Seems like a very simple question. But it's an emotional question, it's a societal question, and it's a macroeconomic question. Nobody wants to provide a straight answer to that question. I think most in this room and most in this community think if you refuse an alternative, you should be charged criminally. And I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I think that that's how people feel. The majority of people feel. At least that's my experience. But this department refuses to just subjectively or objectively put somebody in jail because they're not accepting what we offer. I don't think that's acceptable. But there's got to come a point where instead of being in need and not having any alternatives, to trying to prove a point. Open it up for any questions regarding homelessness before I start talking about school resource officers. Anything specific, any information anybody's looking for?
I have a question.
Please.
I've read 8 articles in the last 2 months that have been published about Lee Gerner in particular. And it appears that there's people that refuse the alternative are gaming the system, and that they're to prove their point and putting you in this position of almost helplessness. Is this true? That's my opinion from reading from the IJ and the Pacific Sun, articles that were written by Will Houston and Nikki Silverstein.
100% yes. I'm trying to figure out how to respond to that without taking up 4 hours of your time. I don't think it's surprising to anybody that what we're dealing with is a significant political stunt. My unit struggles to get people into services for a number of reasons: mental health, sobriety, availability of shelters. The variables, every person is different. Just like everyone in this room is different, everybody on the street is different. So we have to tailor our approach using social services and other resources, including my team. We have to tailor that response or that need to that individual person. When we do that, it's time consuming. And then when we finally come to the end of that process and we identify a good resource for them, they can simply say, I don't want to, I'm not going. And you get deflated. It's completely deflated. How can I say this without sounding completely callous? But of the 16 people in that camp today, as we speak right now, 15 of them are absolutely capable of working. I have concerns about one of them, not because he's dangerous, not because of any issues, but I don't think he's physically capable of work. This unit has never kicked anybody out of a public property encampment. Anybody that has left an encampment did so voluntarily or with assistance, voluntarily because they found their own alternative or because we provided them with an alternative that they were satisfied with. Any other questions specific to homelessness?
Yes, Sgt Bates.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point so the club understands that the law Martin versus Boise allows for overnight camping. It does not allow for 24/7, 365-day-a-year camping. It doesn't allow for somebody to set up a tent and just stay there 24 hours a day for, on days on end. The law allows for overnight camping and they have to break down in the morning and move on. So obviously that's not being enforced. But I agree with your point, and the district attorney's office for the county of Marin needs to be willing to enforce the laws when someone refuses to go to a shelter bed that is available. That's the crux of Martin versus Boise. If there's a shelter bed available and there's an individual that refuses to take services, they need to be moved. They need to move on or be arrested if they refuse to move on. And that's the crucible. That's the crux of the whole issue. And that's we need the district attorney's support to accomplish this. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give you the 30-second Martin v. Boise case. Between 2008 and 2018, a group of homeless people in Boise, Idaho, were being arrested and cited for living in parks, living on streets. Boise, Idaho, Boise PD issuing them tickets and arresting them, saying you're not allowed to camp without permission. Got to go. Over the course of this time, the local courts ruled, yeah, this is a violation. You're guilty. They appealed that to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals covers all states, basically all states west of the Mississippi, including us. And their ruling was, you can't criminalize somebody if they don't have an alternative. Fair enough. It said, can't criminalize them for sleeping or lying because the Eighth Amendment, which states, which explains the definition of cruel and unusual punishment, if they don't have an option in the matter, criminalizing them for being homeless is inappropriate and a violation of the Eighth Amendment. So they reversed that lower court's decision, and the whole Western states threw their hands up and went, what do we do now? 150 cities or counties petitioned the Supreme Court. We need clarification on this ruling. What's the definition of sleep? What's the definition of public property? What's the definition of nighttime? Explain to us when we can enforce it. And the Supreme Court said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't want to hear it. So we've been lingering since late 18, early 19. Can we arrest them? Can we not? But I think somebody with a little bit of common sense reviews the case decision, and it basically says if they refuse an alternative, then they're subject to a criminal sanction. They're subject to arrest or citation. I think it's a very reasonable approach to that law. And Dr. McCurdy is spot on when he says, if you don't have a place to sleep, public place, sleep. That doesn't mean establish a living residence with a cook stove, a shower, bathrooms, a place to hang out and party. That's not representative of an indigent person that doesn't have an alternative. That's somebody who's trying to party. If I did this presentation about a year ago, I would have a completely different tone, but it's starting to get a little bit ridiculous. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question.
I have a question.
Jim
The
Spillman.
people that are in the park behind the library, are they local people or are they from other places?
Excellent question. The vast majority of the homeless in our city, in that encampment and all over the city, are from Nevada, more than 80%. The ones in that camp, off the top of my head,
He knows them all by name. He knows everyone. He talks to him every day. He's there every
2
day.
of the 16 are not from Nevada. The rest are from Nevada, and we've been dealing with or have encountered for a significant amount of time. But I will tell you, and this is not me trying to pitch anything to you or change your opinion on homelessness. But what I will tell you is that at one point we had one person. In late April, early May, we had one person there. And a Rotary Club, one very familiar to you all, helped build a fence to keep people out of the creek. When COVID hit and they heard about a CDC guideline that says more than 10 people, they get a bathroom, the invitations started flowing. Come stay at Lee Gerner Park. If we get 10 people, we get bathrooms. That's not a secret. And currently, that core group of 8 to 10 people are still there. Somebody gets invited from another part of the city or from out of the area. They quickly realize they don't want to be there and they want to get into shelter, and we send them to shelter. And so we're almost in a way, we're almost batting the flies away or batting the bees away, but we haven't hit the hive yet. And I'm concerned that when we get down to the hive, I'm concerned that we won't get the support we need to get charges against the people that refuse to go.
You have a question from Jim Spillman?
Yeah, one of the things for our community service committee was brought up was to do another split rail fence behind the gym on the other side of the creek. Tell me what benefit there would be in installing that fence.
I describe Lee Gerner as having 4 sections: northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, split by that walking bridge that goes over the middle. What Mr. Spillman's describing is the northwest section directly behind the gym. I work closely with the Resource Conservation District of Marin County, Marin Flood District, California Water Resource Association, and Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's not difficult to get them to proclaim that a certain area is experiencing detrimental effects of human presence. So the moon's aligned, and a gentleman that was camped in the area that Mr. Spillman described, we were lucky enough to have reason for him to move without getting into his legal issues. He was forced to move out of that area. Within 24 hours, we got Resource Conservation District, Marin Flood, and Novato Public Works to declare the area in need of habitat restoration, and signs went up. And signs are wonderful, but you all understand that there's a sign every quarter mile on the freeway that says 65, and nobody pays attention to those either. So, nor do I most of the time. But the signs have gone up, which gives us.
I want to record it.
That's all right. I have a lieutenant sitting right here too. He knows already. It's too late. The signs are great, and they give us a legal reason to move somebody out of there. It's a beautiful thing. Physical barrier is best. I would strongly recommend your club continue to consider the option of putting that split rail fence, hopefully one that matches the other for aesthetic purposes. I would greatly appreciate that happening, and I support it, and I'll be happy to be there from start to end. I'm not much of a hammer swinger, but I can certainly help out. Here's the issue we run into. There's no doubt we're vacating that area, not just because there's human interaction there, but because people set up camp. And we don't want that to happen. That's not a secret, but that's going to be viewed politically. The optics of that don't look good. You're trying to keep homeless people out. Yes, it's true. They're crushing that creek. They're flattening out areas that need to be banked. They're establishing a place to live, so they're trampling down all the foliage and what they call the riparian habitat. I never knew that word until I got into this job. Riparian means the habitat and the life along a waterway. So I use the word now because it makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about. But I think Dr. McCurdy would probably agree in saying that that fence and that signage that we put up simply moved the problem over. And unfortunately, it moved the problem over into the grassy area next to the library. So do we want them to be in a place where we can't see them? Or do we want them out of the habitat? That's the issue we run into. I forgot to mention one thing. Lee Gerner is a very unusual park. Bank to bank is owned by the Marin Flood District. If you were, stay with me here on this one now, an overhead view of the library now, with your head facing north, you have the parking lot, the building, and a grassy area from right to left. Draw a line from their property line, what we call a prolongation, straight north from the edge of the parking lot and the edge of the grassy area, all the way to the middle of the creek. That's county property. So why is somebody wearing this patch talking to you about county property? Because on either side of that and on either side of the creek is city property, and it's a city park. Lee Gerner, Citizen of the Year 1979, rolling over in his grave right now. I'm working diligently to get the county to participate in enforcement and outreach along with the police department. I'd like to transition to school resource officers unless somebody has another question about the homeless.
I have one more question about homeless officers. And that is, for a number of years, we had the rotating emergency shelter team that our club supported, but the county discontinued funding 2 years ago. Would that, if that were re-implemented, provide a tool to give people a place to stay so that they would not have the opportunity to camp?
That's a fantastic question. It's a pertinent question. Here's the frustration. Let's say we establish a camp, as you described, a 123 Main Street. We provide them all the services they need, everything they want. And I go up to them and I say, go there. And they say, no. I'm back to square one. I have a shelter available for them with all the resources they need.
Which one's that, the oblong shape or the round one?
The round one.
Is that a question or somebody just getting muted?
Yeah, somebody is.
Two issues with establishing a sanctioned camp. The first issue is that when we spend money and resources on establishing a sanctioned camp, we're losing money and resources from outreach, what we're doing right now, which has been very successful in my opinion. Not as successful as I'd like it to be. Problem number two is we're back to square one. They're not going to want to live there. And in fact, case in point, Sausalito. Got a group of people at Dunphy Park. Sausalito takes the time and money to establish lockers, resources, wash stations, and whatnot. said, today's drop dead Tuesday, time to go. Go to the place that we just sanctioned. They all sat in their chairs, said nope. And then on top of that, filed a lawsuit, an injunction with the federal court. I just don't, the struggle comes from a lack of common sense. You're being provided with what you want and you refuse. And I don't have a legal backup. I don't have anything with teeth to force you to do that. And if I do force you, I don't look empathetic to those that are homeless. My plan, when I was given a time frame for this meeting, I am more than happy to sit at the lieutenant's desk and take up his time until you all are too tired to talk. So after 1:30, when the buzzer sounds, I'm not going anywhere. So I'd love to chat more. This is the kind of stuff that makes my socks go up and down. I want to talk school resource officers very briefly, if that's acceptable. Yeah, okay, real quick, okay. This police department has 2 school resource officers. One of them is paid for by the Novato Unified School District through a grant. On March 2nd and on March 16th, there will be school board presentations about how the community feels about school resource officers and how the parents and staff feel about SROs. This is my shameless plug. They are invaluable to this department, this community, and the youth that live here. We are closing cases with their assistance because of their familiarity with our youth in the community. They are a positive influence on those on campus and are absolutely needed. The fact that there's a negative, what's the best way to say this? There's negative talk about school resource officers could not be farther from the truth. And this is my case in point. We all agree in law enforcement and the greater community that community-oriented policing is the best policing model out there. That's undeniable. Everybody will agree. Community-oriented policing means putting a police officer in a specific area so that they can get to know the people, get to know the businesses, get to know the criminals, become familiar with that area, make people feel more comfortable coming to law enforcement as a resource, and establishing that relationship. It all around is better. Community-oriented policing is the best model, and nobody can argue that. That is exactly what school resource officers are. They're embedded into a community that has its own rules, laws, and hierarchy. It has community members, students and staff, and they get to know those folks and open up communication. I would greatly appreciate your support voicing your concern about the potential elimination of the school resource officer program at Novato Unified School District. There are several ways you can write in, email in, and call in during their meetings, much like a city council meeting during general comment. You're going to see myself, my supervisor, Lieutenant Sophie Winter, and the 2 school resource officers speak at both of those. And you're going to see a lot of social media videos, posts, explanations about why the program is so important. And I could not feel more strongly about this. So I'd appreciate the support on that. Any questions? Go ahead. Gloria and Don.
Yeah, my comment is once before I listened to a service officer at the College of Marin, I believe. At any rate, he was at one of those schools. And the point was that he did a marvelous job and we had an opportunity to talk to him. I think that the current service officers in Novato probably should get out to the public and be in some way recognized for what they're doing to support you. I certainly support you, and I'm sure most of our people would support you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I agree with you. If you're a police officer in charge of 2 police officers in charge of 13 schools, 2 of which are high schools, 4 of which are middle schools, the job is pretty taxing. They work hard and they're dedicated. But I agree, we could do more for public outreach, and we shouldn't have to blast public outreach in the weeks leading up to the potential of them losing their program. That's something we should have been more proactive about. Just yesterday, you've seen on the news these folks come into a cell phone store and smash everything up and steal the phones and run out. Police officer that took that case, investigated it, got some surveillance video, said they look pretty young, they look high schoolish age, held his phone up to the school resource officer, and the school resource officer goes, "That's Johnny and Tommy. They live over at 123 Main Street." Closed the case in 15 minutes. And this story repeats itself. And that's just one criminal aspect. The relationships have been formed. The fact that the kids are opening up to a police officer wearing a badge and a gun. Number of arrests at a school level couldn't be lower. These kids are not being booked and arrested. I don't care what the color of their skin is. I don't care what the violation is. The few arrests that they've made on campuses involving students had to do specifically with serious felonies. Many of these other violations are going to student-led restorative justice programs where they decide what the punishment should be. It's a fantastic program, and if we lose it, I'm very concerned about the status of our school system if we lose our resource officers.
Sergeant Bates, we're going to ask you to hang on. We're going to close the meeting, and then there'll be time after the meeting to ask additional questions and continue the conversation. So first up, we're going to go to Jim Spillman to draw our raffle winner for the day.
So the winning raffle number for today is 1687.
Okay, who's close?
1652.
8.
Who's got it? Penny?
This is pay on. I got 1688.
That's pretty close, Payon. So you're the winner. Good job. Great. I want to acknowledge our guests and visitors. We had Vicki McDill with Bill, Gloria Dunn-Violin with Dawn, Susie McCurdy with Craig, and then our Duncan McSwain, a recent frequent visitor, along with our visiting. You all very much for tuning in. We had 48 screens today, plus our visitors. And Sergeant Bates will get a speaker's gift out to you. We'll ask Gary or Mike Howard to get your address, or you can just send it to Novato PD, and they shouldn't confiscate it. But we'll make sure to get a nice speaker's gift out to you for joining our meeting today. Next week's meeting on March 5th, past President Ron Harness will preside, and we will have Marin County District Attorney Lori Fragoli. So you may want to tune in again, Officer Bates, to listen what Lori Fragoli has to say, and update from the DA's office. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting, but ask folks that want to stay on, I'll leave the Zoom meeting open, and we can continue our conversation with Officer Bates. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks to the Sergeant for a great program.
Okay, looks like Moses has a question.
Before you run off, I'm going to ask philosophical. I want you to pretend you're not an officer and not a uniform. I'm going to ask you to speak as a citizen, if you would. The issue you talked about with homelessness is widespread. It's social. It has to do with justice system, medical, psychiatric. No one from the top down, as you pointed out to us, from the Supreme Court down, has really given us any direction as a society. So I ask you, as a citizen, what would you like to see being done, and what do you suggest society needs to do to move us forward? Because we're going in circles.
You want to turn the recording off now, or
I did?
Or should I just go?
I said you're out of uniform.
All right, you ready? My boss is sitting right here, but I'm going to do it anyways. we got to stop being so soft. We have got to stop pandering to 3% of people that have a vocal opinion. I'm sorry. You got a group of adult, capable people living in tents in your city park. And we keep voting for people and laws. Remember, everybody that made these decisions was either appointed by an elected official or is an elected official. And we've decided that it would be mean if we XYZ. We'll look bad if we XYZ. At the end of the day, there's a reason there's a penal code and a vehicle code. There's a reason there's the sign that says 65 on the freeway. If you are truly in need of help, housing, mental health services, whatnot, here's the way I describe it. Is your first name Moses or is it last name Moses?
First name is Moses. Feel free.
Bring me a homeless person who says, I need help and I'm willing to accept it. I'll put a roof over their head within 12 hours. I'll get them fed. I will get them mental health assistance, medication, whatever they need. Easy. The issue we run into is the person that says, I can do it on my own, or I don't like that. I prefer something better. Truly, truly beggars being choosers. So we've got to get away from this. I can't believe that somebody who lives in a tent is just trying to survive. No, they're not. They want to live their life how they wanted to live their life, and screw you and your laws. We need to change our local municipal code to stop this from happening. And we need to change our state laws to stop this from happening. And then also enforce that.
See, but if I may, not to be too argumentative, but you said there's a Supreme Court decision that prohibits the municipal, it'd have to go to Congress if I hear you right, because we could set an ordinance here in Novato or in the county or state of California. But right now we have a US Supreme Court decision that overrules that, correct?
I may have misspoken, but to be clear, it went to the Supreme Court.
But they didn't rule.
They refused to hear it,
Exactly.
which means the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision stands.
Unless you bring another case up.
Exactly. I am, don't tell my chief this, but I am fully prepared to test that case law. I am ready to test that case law. It's just not going to look good. And the issue, the whole purpose of the Supreme Court is to explain and clarify issues from lower court decisions. That's a major component of the Supreme Court. We don't have that clarification. And it would seem common sense to say, if it violates the 8th Amendment to arrest somebody who doesn't have an alternative, well, it sounds like if somebody has an alternative, refuses to take it, they should be subject to criminal sanctions. But we don't have a test case, apparently anywhere in the Western United States, to say, yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Law enforcement plays catch up. Laws change. We've got to hurry and change our policies and procedures to match that.
Gary, you have a question?
So Lori's going to speak to us next week, and she's going to know about this. I felt that to put 2 in a row would give us an opportunity to discuss it as really quality human beings that are going to try to make the world better. And this is maybe an opportunity in a little way. Sgt Bates has been struggling this with people hitting at him the whole time. I'd kind of like us to destroy the recording just so that it's not there and out there to create some problems for Sgt Bates. He's been quite honest with us. And if you'd help us do that, I'd appreciate it a lot. This is a wonderful presentation, folks, and what an opportunity for us to grow as a group of people. We got a lot of work to do in this country, but we're going to get it done.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be destroying anything. I mean, he provided his honest opinion as an individual, and we don't have anything to hide as he doesn't. So
No, I can't give you my personal opinion to stop worrying about what people think and then say, don't tell anybody I just said that. You know, I hope that my opinion rings true with a large portion of our community. And I feel that it does, especially in the law enforcement community. Lori is spectacular. We really enjoy Lori Fergoli. The reality is, though, that nobody wants to be the bad guy in this situation. Nobody wants the bad press. I would challenge, hypothetically, somebody to ask, we've got a homeless problem. If somebody refuses a shelter bed, what should we do with them? That's the head law enforcement official in this county. Curious. Be interesting to hear what the response is.
Do you know what's going to happen to the
Pardon me, Vicky.
farmers market?
Sonia had a question, Vicky, so let's get Sonia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. From a pragmatic point of view, would certain circumstances change if the property ownership of all the properties involved changes?
100% yes. If somebody was camping on your front yard, it would take me about 30 seconds to fix that problem.
Right.
If your front yard was public property, it's going to take me as long as it's taking me to work on this Lee Gerner problem. Public and private is night and day.
Vicky,
thank you for bringing that up.
Vicky, you had another question?
No, I was just wondering, because the farmer's market's been behind long, is that going to have any effect? Is the encampment going to have any effect on having the farmer's market back there?
The camp was there. In fact, arguably, there were more people there last farmer's market season. I understand COVID and whatnot, but they've been there since the previous. We've got a couple of some of the homeless folks there are no longer there, and some new ones have come in and such. But the only effect it had on farmer's market was they held a protest there because they weren't happy with me arresting, or my unit arresting one of their occupants. So I don't see any effect on farmers market. In fact, I'm in a meeting on a weekly basis, and then another meeting every other week about homelessness specific to Lee Gerner, and occasionally the farmers market folks will join in on that meeting. For a long time, the folks at that camp didn't want to have bad press. They kept the place very clean. One of the cleanest camps I've ever been to, and they were doing a great job. They didn't want the public to come see them, be slobs, and then have a negative opinion about them. But I'm telling you right now, that has completely taken a nosedive. I'm not seeing the pride that they used to have in their camp. I don't see that anymore. I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, with help from Department of Public Works, we moved over 3,000 pounds of garbage out of that place, including large structures and tents and things like that. So I'm not talking about just piles of garbage, things that they no longer wanted. If I could ask one other thing I forgot to mention, and I know time is tight, but I very much appreciate and understand why people bring donations to that camp. It shows that somebody has a big heart and they're concerned about the people. But what we've got to understand is that they are the most visible homeless people in this town, but they're not the only homeless people. If you hear from somebody that wants to provide donations to homeless people, have them reach out to either my unit or North Marin Community Services, or what we call the CARE team from Community Action Marin. Let them disseminate donations evenly. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds a week are coming to Lee Gerner in the form of food, water, clothing, tents, you name it. And it is becoming a huge backload of stuff. And I can't tell the nice lady who lives down the street who's bringing stuff, I can't stop her and say, no more, please. But I think you follow what I'm saying here. It's getting to be a little ridiculous.
Enabling them and also contributing.
Alan, you had a question? You need to unmute, Alan. There you go.
We used to work with,
You muted again, Alan.
okay, hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we used to work with the REST program that I think someone mentioned earlier. And one of the instructions that we had was, don't give them money. They have money. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I will not speak for all homeless people, but what I will say is there are a number of people that have, of the vast majority, and certainly the vast majority of those at Lee Gerner Park have income coming in from one form or another. In fact, some of them that what we call fly signs, when they hold their signs up on the side of the road, make enough money to pay for their cell phone bill and their storage unit. Their money should not be a consideration when we talk about donations. If somebody has the desire to donate money, again, it should go to Community Action Marin and North Marin Community Service, so it's disseminated evenly. Because remember, there's folks that you don't see out there, right? If we got 16 at Lee Gerner right now, that means I got 84 throughout the rest of the city that you don't see. And there, and Mr. Dunham, I just wanted to say I'm in the south wing of the building and it's just built spectacularly and designed really well.
Thank you. I understand there's not enough storage.
We're using our jail cells downstairs for storage.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, Vicky?
I am on a group on Facebook called Novato in the Know, and there's another one, Novato Matters, and I know there's a couple of other neighborhood ones. And there's people on there all the time going, you know, I want to bring this over to Lee Gerner Park. I want to do this. Somehow, if we could get the information on those group things on Facebook, that they don't go to that park, they go to the specific entities that you want them to go to, that might help.
I think it might step into the level of inappropriate for a police department to disseminate that kind of information, but I sure could use the help doing exactly what you just said. Community Action Marin and North Marin Community Services. And Community Action Marin has what's called a care team, and they go out, they're boots on the ground, homeless resource. The care team that's dedicated to City of Novato, we get one. She is the hardest working person in the county of Marin. And I try to get her coffee whenever I can or support her however I can, but she does a heck of a job.
Thank you, Officer Bates. So